So welcome everybody to the AMA for Gitcoin. We've done this, we've organized this along with Gitcoin to answer any questions you have about the hackathon. Right now, we're completing the RFP phase. So we have 3 different prizes out there. There's a few of you that have already applied. We're loving the submission so far, but we wanted to give you a chance to ask any other questions you might have about some of them. Of course, we've got Isaac, our head core developer. Thanks for taking the time, Isaac.
My pleasure. Yeah, and just to let those of you watching know, I have just this morning spent the last couple hours reading through, not a couple hours, 1 hour, reading through these submissions and seeing what's going, and it's exciting to see that there's some activity. So if you're in the crowd, Richard Dennis, thank you, and others, thank you for your already propositions. You're looking at something.
And now, so you mentioned, you know, one of them, Richard Dennis. Was that under the early warning or the?
Yeah, it looks like they have 2. One in the open track bounty sector, and the other in the early warning 51% detection sector, I think.
Okay, so you know, a lot of these we created right before MESS was even implemented or an idea. You know, the hackathon it is focused on security, even though, you know, a lot of our security issues are now further back, right, in our rear view mirror. I still think that a lot of these are valuable, not only for us, but any proof of work system. Like the early warning 51% detection system. What exactly would somebody be looking at to detect something ahead of time, like a 51% attack?
I think there's probably a couple of scopes. One of them would be, I guess, chain analysis and network analysis. So sort of like the intra system for ETC. And the other would be inter-system. So that would be looking at not just ETC, but the systems that surround it and can influence it. So that would be like, you know, watching other chains or other hash rate providers. And systems could be protocol based, and they could also be monitoring based.
Okay, so
at least those are the sort of the general broad categories that come to mind.
And for me to understand better, because, you know, I'm constantly learning from you, dude, what would the difference between a protocol-based system be versus, I'm sorry, what was the other one you mentioned?
Oh, like a, I guess,
versus monitoring.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in monitoring-based system, it's just looking at.
Yeah, I mean, one of the ones that a couple of folks from the ETC community have taken on already is like watching nice hash, right? So they've got a robot that watches the nice hash market, and if that market is, if that market behaves in an anomalous or potentially dangerous way, then you can at least raise a flag.
Okay, so, and that's the version of monitoring.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's a version of monitoring, and then also in the inter-system idea, right? It's like looking at the a hash rate provider there.
And what would an example of a protocol-based one be?
I think there's an example that's been submitted, but I'm going to hesitate to touch on that because I'm sure I can't do it justice in the few lines that have been allotted for it. But protocol-based systems would be looking probably primarily at the intra structure and the information that's available on the chain data, as well as at the network level. You could look at network topology, look for anomalous or risky behavior there, as well as watching and maybe even mitigating, or at least providing mitigation tools for 51% attacks. So risky or anomalous behavior you'd look for there would be like, is the difficulty changing in a weird way? Is it dropping a lot? Is it raising a lot? Are we seeing new ether bases, which again is just a heuristic because of course that can be manipulated, but there are patterns that exist, and those are patterns that take the form of chain data as well as topology. So basically just watching patterns, and the trick there would be having an algorithm that was usable, because anomaly detection in any kind of complex system is a fairly challenging task more often than not.
So it sounds like the faster one to implement is the monitoring version, but the protocol version is more complex, but could be detecting things faster. Is that fair?
Well, yeah, I think probably both have plenty of room for complexity. I think that they probably can be differentiated in terms of one way might be the timeline. So like, let's say, for example, you're watching the NiceHash API. I believe NiceHash has a 4-minute ramp up window. And so if you can watch that API and get an alert at 11:56 that there's going to be an earthquake at noon, you have a 4-minute head start. Whereas if you're watching chain data, or sort of if you sort of got your ear on the ground and on ETC or the ETC network, you're only going to be hearing about that earthquake as it happens.
As it's happening.
Right. And hopefully at the start of it happening. But and then so that's early warning and detection. I think there's also an interesting space, and would be open to seeing a proposal that handles response and mitigation to that, because it's really important to know if an earthquake is coming, but it's also really important to have response plans and response tools that can mitigate that scenario. Like systems, one of the common problems for the chain reorg that users all over the community faced back in August was we know we went through a reorg because we have the logs to show for it, but now we need the chain data of the old versus the new. And that became a scarce commodity because the reorg disappears the old data for most of the conventional APIs. So in that way, if you can have a system that standardizes or exposes those different stories, and at least broadens the perspective and understanding of what exactly happened, so that even in a retrospective scenario, you have more to work with than you would otherwise, and more to work with more quickly.
Exactly what we would want to see on the second bounty track. And I think those are great suggestions for people who are still thinking about, what their submission should be. And then we've got the kind of open-ended open track bounty. I know there's been a few submissions there. If you weren't already knee deep in ETC, what do you think would be a fun kind of open track? Like if you could look at that wide world of different ways to help the network outside of the fact that you work on the core client. What do you think would be fun to work on?
Man, there's so the summary here lists a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm tempted to just go through and read from my notes here, because this is the question that we were answering when we were pulling together these these prompts. I think personally, I'm interested in Kademlia and the discovery and improvements to network topology and connectivity and peering. I'm interested in that because it's I like light touches, and I think ETC has something that at a really fundamental level works and is not broken. So light touches are appealing to me, and a loose definition of light touch before going any further would be like doesn't require a hard fork, and that nodes can implement experimentally and test in production without hurting anybody or anything.
Right, that would be huge.
And so I think, or on test nets too, they're great, but peering has a lot of room for growth, I think, both in terms of the protocol and the analysis of the topology. There are some other ideas around inter-network solutions for enhancing security that I think with some creative thought might be able to propose interesting solutions that that would also be light touch. So there's general security models, kind of like inherited security from other chains. I think that that's interesting both from a security and hash rate perspective as well as a general utility, and we can do cool things with it perspective. So I like that multiplicity of uses. The other one that I think would be really practical and useful is sort of a deeper or deep dive into network analysis and network analysis tooling. So there's some exporter tools that exist, and those are great, and we use them every day at ETC Labs. But I think there's probably room for growth further in terms of being able to understand and explore what's happening on the chain, both quantitatively and qualitatively. So I mean, like have numbers, but also be able to produce pictures and consumable information.
Yeah, tell a story about what's happening.
Tell a story about what's happening. I mean, these would be questions like, what kinds of contracts are on the chain right now? Are there commonly used opcodes? Do we have a good tooling system for making sure that gas prices are pretty correct? Do we have an analysis of gas spending, and do we have analysis of miner front running, whether it's happening or not? Do we have basically just insights and tools to really know what's happening on ETC, because blockchains like this are really unique in the world, right? Because it's a set of canonical data that everybody can see, that isn't going anywhere, and is really young, right? So I think there's just a lot of room for growth in tooling to make sense of it.
Yeah, and these aren't just restricted to ETC. What's great is a lot of these things you've mentioned would be valuable across multiple blockchains.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And in our case, especially across multiple EVM-based blockchains, which is one of the things that ETC Labs Core sort of has as one of its mantras, is that it's not just about ETC, it's about the EVM ecosystem and handling these technologies as extensible and borderline generic, hopefully generic tools that are very useful for ETC, but can also be shared with everybody else.
Well, I think the good thing is we've been able to cover, a good amount of the questions that we had received ahead of time. I do see that we have, a few people on. I do want to give some time to your questions. we've got Isaac and myself here for, probably the next 15 minutes. So I want to make sure that if you have any questions, they're addressed. So you can either put them in the chat or in the ask a question field. Oh, man, you just gave all the list of all the different ideas they could submit for an RFP.
I got a question for you, Dean. I'm admiring the picture behind your head, and I wonder if I can get a better view of it, and wondering what it is.
So this is a Greek painter.
Yeah.
And it's a man and a woman together. He
Yeah.
has angels. He's like an angel.
Yeah.
The name of this painter, I forget his name. Fascianos. I'll send you the name.
Yeah.
He's actually a pretty well-known painter.
That's cool.
This might be the most impressive piece of anything in my entire house.
Cool. I like it.
But yeah, in America, no one would know. In Greece, it's a big deal.
Now they do. Yeah. At least I do.
All my little, yeah. God, it's crazy. It's been very, I've had a very Greek experience lately, the last 2 or 3 weeks with the army, and then this, all that stuff.
Yeah. Cool.
I'm just glad.
Do I see if we have any questions, or are questions going through you? I'm looking at my screen, wondering if I'm missing anything. Or...
We would see them here.
Okay. Okay.
What I want to say though is what's been fantastic is how good the hard fork went. Now Chris has a question for us. You referred on tooling about keeping both chains on a reorg. Would you prefer this off-chain or on-chain through an EIP?
Interesting question. I would be curious to see what you come up with. I'm open to either one. Yeah.
So I think Chris, that means that choose what you think would make sense for your proposal. It doesn't seem that off-chain or on-chain is a prerequisite for the proposal. Now, philosophically, just so I can understand the nuance in this kind of question, there must be a drawback, an apparent drawback on off-chain, on-chain. What's the risk reward there?
Well, off-chain is
this too big of a big of a question?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward. Off-chain is easier, and it's more pragmatic. The downside is that it's not on the chain, which means that it's not canonicalized. But even though there is a reorg, the benefits of having it on chain, I think, are that it's immediately shared, and so it's accessible by anybody who knows how to get it and wants to. The downside is that unless there were a change to protocol that handled how nodes dealt with, or the chain dealt with reorgs, you'd still have the same issues of trust, whether it's on the chain or not, that you would have if I just asked Chris and said, hey, did you keep a copy of that chain data from this reorg? And he says, yeah, sure. Do you want me to just put it on AWS? And I'd say, sure. And now I trust Chris that what he's going to put on AWS is going to be like the actual copy of the old chain.
Right.
which is the same trust scenario that I'm going to have if he puts it on the chain instead of AWS, right? So unless the chain can assure me and verify that that information is actually what I had, which there's no guarantee, then it's
especially in the middle of a reorg, right? I would think that that's the point at which you're going to question its integrity the most is during a reorg.
Yeah. And so I think, if I were going about it, what I would practically do first is just build an API, because Geth keeps that information. So Geth will persist all of that block data that gets reorged. So it's on there. It's just hard to get. And just requires developer manhandling of the database to get that old data that you have. And so I think what I would do is just write an API that solves that problem, for starters.
Yeah, I think you helped even more than Chris initially expected. So it sounds like the API is the way to start on this one.
I don't know if that's what I do, but I mean, there's a reason we're asking other people to solve these problems.
That's true. That's very true. That's what's beautiful about this, right? You get all these new ideas, different perspectives.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're just under half an hour here. We'll keep it going just in case there's any late additions. But I think we addressed all the earlier questions, and that was a great question, Chris. I appreciated that, because I also got to learn about the difference between having an on-chain and off-chain. And after this, I'm going to be writing up some documentation for how you can get your wrapped ETC.
All right. I've been waiting. Yeah. Nice.
Get ETC into the DeFi scene.
Sweet.
And
little Wetsy.
Yeah, get some Wetsy. It's a good name. I like it. I like Wetsy. No, I think that's gonna be a big opportunity. I've interacted with a few DeFi contracts myself. You like Wetsy too? I've interacted with a few, and it's crazy how much you pay in transactions. It's ridiculous. And like I recently had gone into one where I need to first, wrap something else and then stake it somewhere else and then put it back. So I had to do 10 transactions to purchase this one thing. And I mean, I was broke. I think I wanted to buy $100 worth, and I ended up buying $20 worth because $80 went to transactions.
It's tough out there.
It's tough out there. Well, the good thing is it's the grass is greener on our side, because the transactions are going to be a lot cheaper.
That's right.
Okay, I think it's a good point to call it. I hope this was informational for everybody that's working on the RFPs. We will post this that way, in case you didn't have a chance to join in, you'll be able to see some of the answers we had. As always, you can find me in the town hall in the Gitcoin page. As well, all of the questions will be relayed to Isaac. Also, he's also going to be constantly looking at the submissions, like he mentioned he looked at them today.
Yeah,
constantly. You know, that it's gonna be my responsibility to make sure that I ping him whenever there's a new application. So
I
if he
got a
doesn't see it
dedicated
immediately,
thing
it's
on
my
screen.
fault.
It just lives right there. Yeah.
I'm gonna be the dedicated guy. You've got a dedicated screen. We know
Yep.
that this is all happening. So Isaac, brother, thank you for your time.
Thank you as well,
Always
Dean.
good catch. Yeah, and guys, good luck. We look forward to all your submissions, and thanks for working on ETC.